The Penn State Nittany Lions will in fact make their first ever college football playoff, and this is how it's going to happen.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is a 2024 season overview for Penn State football, so that includes everything to a record prediction, to expectations for Penn State's offense and defense, stat predictions as well. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Be a part of the discussion. Let me know your predictions for this Penn State football team, from games that they'll win and lose to predictions for the stats for key players on this Penn State team. And also, please leave a like on this episode. We'll start with the fact that I do believe that this Penn State team will make its first ever college football playoff appearance, and I think they will finish 10-2. I know the stigma around the 10-2 record, but with this schedule, 10-2 is good enough to get you to the college football playoff. It also might be even good enough to get you into the Big Ten championship, as well as a home playoff game in the opening round. That certainly doesn't get you a bye. That's 11-1. You win the Big Ten championship. That gets you into the top four. But at 10-2, with or without a Big Ten championship appearance, gets you into the college football playoff, and it might even allow Penn State to host a game at Beaver Stadium. And according to Vegas, Penn State is going to be favorited in 11 out of their 12 games. The only one that they're not is that one against Ohio State. So this is a realistic expectation. I'm kind of accounting for unforeseen circumstances, unforeseen injuries, because it's the game of football. You can't predict those types of things, but I'm accounting for that in the fact of you're also going through a schedule that you've never seen before with new teams in the Big Ten, 3 of which they're playing. The only one that they're not facing is Oregon. So I think this is a realistic expectation. In a perfect world, Penn State has the ability to go 12-0. In a perfect world, they do. They're only 3-point underdogs to that Ohio State team. All things are equal. Both teams on paper going into the season are still 1 week away from West Virginia. But all things, if Penn State were to play Ohio State right now with where they are respectively, Penn State is only a 3.5-point underdog to the national championship contender Ohio State Buckeyes. My pick to win the national title. Now, I get it. It's at Beaver Stadium. It's at home, but that's the way the schedule is. But in my mind, they finish 10-2. You can't predict injuries. Sometimes they happen. And with the depth that they do have, I think a lot of them Penn State will be able to overcome them, wade the storm, and make it through a full gauntlet of a season. Other parts have to do with the schedule. Penn State has a really tough 4-week stretch in the schedule, which I will get to in just a moment. But with the depth that they have, matchups against key opponents, this is a 10-2 team in my mind. They very well could make the Big Ten championship at 10-2. I think this is the third best team behind Ohio State and Oregon. Those are going to be the obvious choices to contend for the Big Ten in itself. Whether they host a playoff game or not is also up for debate, but what isn't up for debate is that Penn State does make the college football playoff, whether that's a 10-2, hypothetically 11-1, maybe they even go undefeated. The chips are on the table for Penn State to do any of those 3. I just think it's the most likely, most logical outcome is that they finish 10-2 with a loss to Ohio State and another key loss as well, which I'll talk about again in the schedule here. Because that 10-2 record gets you most likely possibly a 7th seed or an 8th seed, depending on how those games go. If you lose to Ohio State and then somebody you probably shouldn't have lost to, okay, that's going to put it into question. But if you lose games that are understandable, road games, a top 5 team in the country, then yeah, I think the committee is going to be understanding of that. They're 8th in the preseason AP rankings. I think that's spot on. And right now, that would get you a game. That would get you a host game in the playoff in Beaver Stadium. And actually, that would be a playoff game against Michigan. Now let's talk about the schedule. And I hate seeing these takes. I hate seeing the takes that Penn State, they have an easy schedule. They lucked out. I understand when you look at Michigan's perspective that they play a school like Texas. Penn State opens up against West Virginia. Those are two different levels, two different tiers of opponent. But Penn State has the sixth toughest schedule according to Pro Football Focus. So to make an argument that it's easy, that Penn State got lucky compared to everybody else, that is, Penn State has one of the top 10 most difficult schedules in all of the country, and that is why I have them at 10-2. West Virginia is not going to be a pushover, even though I'm confident that Penn State wins. West Virginia is not going to be a pushover. And then right in the middle of this schedule, all consecutively, you have at USC, a bye week wedged in there. Then you go back on the road to Wisconsin, Ohio State, and then the whiteout game against Washington. That's a tough 4-game stretch. That is completely understandable if Penn State happens to lose 2 out of those 4. And that's kind of what I'm accounting for here. All of those teams could be top 25 when Penn State gets to that point in the schedule. And Washington and Wisconsin, I think, are being underrated. I know that Washington has a lot of turnover. I think they're underrated. I think they will be a very good second half team, and that game is in the second half of the season. They're going to need time to figure it out. Same thing with Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin has a lot to build on with another season under Luke Fickell. That's just the small points there about those 2 respective games, but that stretch is where Penn State could make some mistakes there. None of these players, none of these coaches have ever flown out as a group, as a team, right? As a program, Penn State has not done this in the modern day, flying out to Southern California for a regular season game. And I know that's where you're going to stop me. Well, Zach, they've done that for the Rose Bowl. They've done that for other bowl games. The difference is Penn State doesn't have a month to prepare for that trip, and that's also over break. You are going in the middle of the school year to Southern California against a talented USC team after you get finished playing, give or take 4 or 5 games, right? They play UCLA the week before that, but you were playing a regular season schedule. You don't have a month to prepare for somebody that you're not familiar with at all. It's different when it's a bowl game. It's different when you have a month to prepare and you're on break. This is in the middle of the school year. It's something completely unprecedented in this case with the new conference realignment. I know Penn State's done it in the past during the Joe Paterno days, but that was a long time ago. We're talking 20, 30 years ago when Penn State made those kinds of trips. For Penn State this time around, that it's just going to be something brand new, and there's no data points to back it up, right? I circle USC as that second loss. As I look more into it, Penn State's offense is probably going to be clicking at that point in time. That one, I mean, and right now, before the season even starts, Vegas has Penn State as a touchdown favorite. I think that could change. I think USC, as the season progresses, will get better as a team. That road trip is going to be daunting. It will be up to the defense to make sure that they're at their healthiest and have the most players available. Again, that's circumstantial, but USC's offense is going to be a juggernaut. And arguably, I think to that point would be Penn State's the best offense that Penn State is going to face to that point. And then Wisconsin's going to be a physical game. They're going to have a top 10 defense, that Wisconsin team. You could make it a compelling argument that Penn State drops either one of those games. Again, that Wisconsin game is right after the USC game, after that kind of trip to Southern California. So I hope people understand my point that 10-2 it goes over that 9.5 win total. It's a safe pick. And it kind of allows for a margin of error. Again, this is a team that if the deck breaks favorably for them, they can go 12-0. The odds say that they're an 11-1 team to start the season. I'm accounting for some margin of error here. Penn State goes 10-2 in my mind. Now, how's that all going to work out? What can we expect from Penn State's offense? Is Drew Aller going to pad the stat sheet? Can Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton each have 1,000 yards? Is there an unsuspected player that's going to lead the team in rushing touchdowns? We'll talk about the offense and some stat predictions coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC. Hey, Locked On Nittany Lion fans. I'm excited to share a game with you that I know you'll love, and it's Ultimate College Football HC. You step into the role of being a head coach, and you can lead your team to glory. Imagine coaching the Nittany Lions, from recruiting players to managing training camps, scholarships. Every crucial decision is in your hands, but can you handle that pressure? What I love about this game is you have the ability to call offensive plays during the game, shaping your season, your program's future. Ultimate College Football HC It's free, it's ad-free, and it's playable offline, perfect for gaming on the go. And as listeners of the show, Ultimate College Football HC is giving you a special promo code LOCKEDONCFB in the game store for a free boost to start your campaign. And all you got to do to download the game is go to ultimate-cfb.com, or you can find it on the app stores. Begin your coaching legacy today with Ultimate College Football HC. Now, under the direction of Andy Kotelnicki, Penn State's offense will not only be better, just flat out better, they're going to be more explosive. This offense has the assets and the playmakers to honestly do some things that are a little unorthodox, because I know that everyone has question marks about the wide receivers and what can they do, but Andy Kotelnicki is innovative to allow Penn State to do some creative things. And let's talk about those key players. So your returning quarterback, Drew Aller, Beau Pribula, who is a true dual threat, is going to factor in more to the offense. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, who are future NFL players, are back on the team. Tyler Warren is a future NFL player. Trey Wallace is going to be your number one wide receiver. You have Julian Fleming, Amari Evans, Caden Saunders, and Liam Clifford that could all factor into the passing game as well. Those are the first names. They just needed a coordinator. The talent is there. The playmakers have been there at Penn State. They just needed a coordinator to be able to bring out the best in them, and now they do. So enter Andy Kotelnicki. Again, these are expectations along with some stat predictions that I will have as well. But Andy Kotelnicki, under him, we will see Aller run the ball more. Aller dropped some weight and is going to be more of a dual threat quarterback this season. Is he as good of a runner and as athletic as a Beau Pribula? He doesn't have to be, but he can run the football more and be effective at it. Aller's also going to attempt more deep passes. You have to just get the defense to back off, not have the safeties down in the box, and that's going to open things up for Singleton and Allen, who are going to break off more chunk plays, but it's not necessarily going to be only in the running game. Singleton and Allen are very capable receivers that just were underutilized in the passing game. Kotelnicki is going to have them branch out as wide receivers as well. And then expect those specialty packages, those formations, those designs for a Beau Pribula to come in, run some triple option. You can have, imagine a formation with Pribula, Singleton, and Allen. Which players getting the football? Because all of them can break off a chunk play. All of them can score at any given time. They are all three capable runners. Now, as far as stats go, Drew Aller is going to see an increase in everything. And I'm talking pass yards, rushing yards, passing TDs, completion percentage as well. Get him those short throws to get him into rhythm. That's something that Mike Yurcich was lacking, just to build some confidence and game by game with Drew Aller. And yes, that also means interceptions. So the interception rate will go up for Drew Aller as well, because you are going to take those risks, those chances. They'll still be minimized, because that's the type of player that Drew Aller is. He's not just going to go sling the football everywhere into harm's way. So I'm anticipating over 3,500 yards for Drew Aller, 30 passing touchdowns or so, and then 5 or 6 interceptions. That's the line. 3,500 passing yards, about 30 TDs, and then probably double, maybe triple the interceptions. Again, he only had 2 last season. So doubling or tripling it really isn't that much. Now, it's going to be tough to project rushing yards. This is difficult because college football counts a sack as lost yardage on the rushing total. So I can't give an accurate prediction there, but what I can give you is Drew Aller being utilized more as a runner. So you can anticipate, instead of something just like some quarterback scrambles that just keep the drives alive, expect something where he carries the ball 10, maybe 15 times in a game to force defenses to stay honest. Okay, not stack the box, to account with a QB spy and take away an extra defender in coverage in obvious passing situations. Aller is going to be utilized more as a runner. Now let's move to Pribula. Pribula could honestly lead the team in rushing touchdowns, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. It's crazy to think about at first, but then you look at the stat totals from last season in a Mike Yurcich offense when Pribula was a part-time player, and he had 6 touchdowns. Why is that significant? That was tied with Katron Allen. Only 2 behind the team leader in Nicholas Singleton. So it is definitely more likely than people are willing to give it credit for that Pribula could have maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 rushing touchdowns and ultimately lead the team. And I think there's going to be an initiative to get Bo Prabula on the football field in wildcat formation type of packages, goal line type of setups. You don't have to just run Drew Aller into the pile every time on a QB sneak. You can do other things to get creative. Again, that triple option element. I do believe that, and as a part-time player, Prabula had 6 rushing touchdowns a season ago. It is very likely to expect that Prabula could increase that total, will increase that total, and ultimately lead the team in rushing touchdowns as well. Nicholas Singleton is your obvious choice to lead here in rushing yards, and is going to score a number of rushing touchdowns as well. I just think Bo Prabula does. Let's keep it simple about the yardage, though, because Singleton is the home run hitter here. It's not that Katron Allen isn't able to rack up yards as well, but Singleton's your true all-around back with the speed. He can score as easily from inside of 10 yards as he can with a 75-yard run, okay? Katron Allen is more of your power goal line back type and doesn't have that true breakaway speed like a Singleton does. But expect an even number of carries between the two of them again, as long as they're both healthy, and that's why they do that, to maintain that healthiness. Both of them can easily eclipse 1,000 total yards. Rushing yards, that's going to be a different story. Again, I expect a more versatile game plan for both of them where they're utilized in the passing game. So both of them to get 1,000 yards each total is going to be too easy for them. Rushing yards, different story if they're going to be utilized as pass catchers as well. As for the receivers in general, Trey Wallace is your number 1 wide receiver target. I don't think he's not going to go over 1,000 yards. Even if he plays a full season, I'm anticipating something like 700 yards, maybe 6 receiving touchdowns. There's too many different players that will be involved. So I'm talking about Aller's legs, Bo Prabula's legs, Singleton and Allen. They're going to take receptions and yardage away from these players, and that's okay. Get anybody the football to where it works. Tyler Warren is essentially your number 1 target as the tight end. He's your returning veteran. He will lead the team in receiving touchdowns. I think he's going to be utilized in the red zone as well, and either of Aller or Prabula can throw it to him. It doesn't have to be, Prabula's in. He can easily hit a dump-off pass to Warren in the flat that allows them to score a touchdown. And Aller already has a nice rapport with him. So Aller is the starting quarterback, can get you the football as well if you're Tyler Warren. Fleming will help a lot in the red zone, I think more so with his run blocking. So for those who think Fleming's going to come in and be this outright number 1 wide receiver because he had the 5 stars, he was at Ohio State, Trey Wallace is your number 1 wide receiver. I think your number 1 pass catcher, your best available asset is Tyler Warren. Fleming's a phenomenal run blocker, so don't just assume him to be the number 1 caliber wide receiver. He's going to do a lot of different things that will take him off of the stat sheet, or at least he won't put as many gaudy numbers up as some of the other players that are available. Amari Evans is your big play threat. Andy Kotelnicki likes to use motions, jet sweeps, movement, and this is your fastest guy on the offense. Aside from Nicholas Singleton, right? But if we're talking about receivers, true pass catchers here, Amari Evans is a top 5, maybe a top 3 player in terms of speed on this Penn State team. So this is the guy to look out for, not only in big play ability. So if you're looking for someone to break off the most yards per play on average, it's very well going to be Amari Evans, and Andy Kotelnicki needs a player like that. This isn't a Caden Saunders. This isn't a Liam Clifford. This isn't, we'll talk about Tysier Denmark here. But Amari Evans is your biggest speed threat, and Penn State needs him to step up. And that's where I talk about depth as well, because there isn't a true player behind an Amari Evans that can do similar type of things as Evans can. I know that everyone says Caden Saunders is also that kind of deep threat, but he's not. Caden Saunders and Liam Clifford are your quick possession receivers, not your home run threats. That is Evans. And then watch for Denmark to make an impact at some point as well. I think he contributes by midseason, especially if there's an injury. I only named 5 wide receivers that will see true amounts of playing time. Denmark could absolutely factor into the fold of this offense. So those are some stat projections, expectations for the Penn State offense en route to a 10-2 season that gets you in the college football playoff and potentially even a Big Ten championship with that record, at least getting you a host spot in the playoff. And part of the reason they'll be able to do that is because this defense is shaping up to be top 10 caliber once again. We'll talk about Tom Allen's group on the other side of this break. And today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Are you tired after lunch? Well, you're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. With zero sugar, a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore. You can pick from watermelon to tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor truly for everyone. You can try them all. You go to the site, you have an option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors and it's delivered right to your door. It's that easy and that seamless. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get a 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off of your order. This offer is valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with promotions. And the code is not good for subscription orders. But again, that's code LOCKEDONCFB for 20% off your first order. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. So how can Penn State's defense be top 10 once again after they just lost Manny Diaz, Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, other NFL caliber talent? Well, it helps to offset some of those losses when you have Tom Allen to come in and replace Manny Diaz. And once again, this defense is loaded with NFL capable talent down the road. Abdul Carter, Denai Dennis Sutton, Kobe King, AJ Harris in the secondary, KJ Winston, Jalen Reed, even Zachy Wheatley. So, and that's just the defense in a nutshell. So let's break it down further, what the defense is going to look like, what to expect statistically here. So now, under the direction of Tom Allen, this is going to be a 4-2-5 defense with the talent that you have. And it's simply because of the players that you have available to you. You have more capable defensive backs than you do linebackers. So 5 defensive backs, 2 linebackers for the most part. It also is matchup dependent too. Let's, for example, take West Virginia, Illinois. You're probably going to see a little bit more of a 4-3 defensive look as opposed to a 4-2-5. You'll see a hybrid of both. That's what I'm getting at. It's going to be a hybrid type of defense. But when you play UCLA, USC, Washington, even Ohio State, you're probably going to opt more for that 4-2-5 because teams that play more spread type of offenses, you're going to need those extra defensive backs and still be able to respect the ground game as well. And guys like KJ Winston, Jalen Reed are very good in run defense for safeties, for defensive backs. But this is a week-by-week game plan. Again, you're playing West Virginia first. You're probably going to see a mix of a 4-3 and a 4-2-5. Now, start with the defensive line, then go to the secondary, and then the linebackers. Defensive line, beginning with the defensive ends. Abdul Carter and Denai Dennis Sutton are one of the best pass rusher duos in the nation. Not just the Big Ten, in the entire country. The only other one in this similar type of conversation in terms of dynamic duos here, it's over at Ohio State. Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. But I think they're a 1A, 1B. I think they're in a class of their own in terms of that, one defensive end and the other defensive end on the opposite ends of each other. Defensive end depth did take a hit with Jameel Lyons being removed from the team. But when you have Smith Vilbert and Amin Vanover, eventually Zariah Fisher is set to make his way back. And this group is full of veteran defenders at that defensive end spot. You have a solid 2 deep. There's optimism that Zariah Fisher can return at some point. But when he can, this group is a very talented group. And I believe that Denai Dennis Sutton is going to lead the team in sacks. The easy pick is going to be Abdul Carter because of his pass rushing capabilities. But I just try to factor in the potential that he does move back to a linebacker position and has to play there from time to time. It's not that Carter still can't do damage wherever he is. So as more of a full-time pass rusher, he'll definitely rack up. Both of them could easily get over 10 sacks each, but we're talking about team lead here. Denai Dennis Sutton isn't going to be utilized as a hybrid defensive end or a linebacker, depending on the game, depending on game script, depending on what linebackers are available. If you do have some depth issues further down the road, Denai Dennis Sutton's going to be your defensive end the entirety of the season. He is a first-round caliber talent. We already know that Abdul Carter, as the Athletic ranks him as the second best player overall. But the bold prediction here is that Dani Dennis Sutton leads the team in sacks. Both he and Carter have at least 10 each. We'll get into the double digits for sure. Defensive tackles aren't getting enough credit. Last season, I know Manny Diaz was the defensive coordinator, but now you return Carter, Dani Dennis Sutton, guys like Kobe King, Dom DeLuca, to go along with this defensive interior in the front. Devon J. Thomas, Zane Durant, Keziah Izzard, Hakeem Beamon. And then you factor in guys like Alonzo Ford and Caleb Artis who still have something to prove. That's the third part of your depth chart. Those first four that are named are all capable of starting at a lot of other places. And you're going to have two of them that are going to be backups. Penn State's run defense a season ago was top 5 in the nation in terms of yards per carry. Yards per, when you want to look at metrics, I've said this before, look at pass yards per play, rush yards per play, both on offense and defense. That really gives you an idea of how good a group is in those categories. Those are the 4 categories for offense and defense, respectively. But Penn State, the defensive tackles returned all of its veterans. Devon J. Thomas, Hakeem Beamon could have gone to the NFL. Instead, they came back. They're going to bolster their scouting reports. And this just adds, again, veteran experience, talent, leadership in that interior of the defense. I want to skip over to the secondary because I have more optimism for them than the linebackers, and I will explain why. The secondary, I'm really high on this group. This group was a question mark going into the offseason and has now quietly become a strength. And that's the words of Tom Allen, loose quote here. But Tom Allen and James Franklin had alluded to the fact that the secondary could be even better than what they had a season ago. And Penn State, if it wasn't for Johnny Dixon's health concerns, would have 3 NFL cornerbacks right now as we speak. Kalen King, Daquan Hardy, and Johnny Dixon would all be on NFL rosters right now if Dixon was fully healthy, and I know that he's working his way back. Besides the point. So you have to replace 3 NFL caliber cornerbacks, and your secondary, I'm telling all of you that it's going to be better. Absolutely. You bring in A.J. Harris. You have Zach Wheatley, who's taken a step forward at that safety position. K.J. Winston is somebody else that is being mocked in the first round of future and in the 2025 NFL draft. Jalen Kimber comes in through the transfer portal. We've heard rave reviews about the development consistently of Davian Collins. Oh yeah, and don't forget about Cam Miller. And then there's guys like Elliott Washington and Zion Tracy who round out the depth chart. Those are your third string players at cornerback. A.J. Harris, Cam Miller, Davian Collins, and Jalen Kimber are going to be your first 4 up. But I feel pretty good about that third group of cornerbacks as well. And then, as I mentioned, the safeties, Jalen Reed and KJ Winston are very good for safeties against the run. Then you have their pass coverage capabilities and Zach Wheatley that, according to James Franklin, the switch has flipped for him. It has come together in this season for Zach Wheatley, and we know what kind of game that he brings. He's the center fielder. He's your true free safety. He's going to lead the team in interceptions, probably in terms of total turnovers overall. When he would come in limited part-time action, he would force fumbles. He would get interceptions. Now he's more proven and polished as a tackler. It's time for the emergence of Zach Wheatley. That is an easy choice to lead the team in not only interceptions, but turnovers forced overall. I think Abdul Carter would probably want something to say about that because I think of the strip sack fumbles and everything else, but I'll go with Zach Wheatley here to force the most turnovers because of that interception total that he will have by the end of the season. But this secondary is really, really good and has 3 NFL caliber safeties in Winston, Reed, and Wheatley. Now, the pass defense takes a step forward. Run defense, I know I just got finished hyping up the defensive tackles, but why it could take a small step backwards is because of the depth at linebacker. Kobe King is not getting enough credit, and I think he will prove everybody else wrong. That anybody that thinks of him as just, okay, he's another linebacker. I see people in terms of ranking the overall talent that he's kind of in the top 20. I have him as a top 5 player on this team overall. I think he is that valuable to this Penn State team. Kobe King is one of the players that you just can't afford to lose for any reason. You can't predict injuries, but Kobe King needs to be able to play 12 plus games for Penn State this season. You have Dom DeLuca. You have Tony Rojas, who's expected to emerge, and I think he will in due time. I think those first 4 games, you'll see some struggles here and there, but the talent, that overall just pure raw talent will jump off of the page for Tony Rojas. After that, it's a lot of question marks. Kavion Keys, same situation with Jameel Lyons, expelled from school, so he's off the team. But even if Keys and Lyons were on this team, I would still have concerns about the linebacker depth chart as a whole. You have Tyler Elsdon, veteran in the room, one of the smarter linebackers overall in the Big Ten. But this group doesn't. Tamir Robinson is up and coming. After that, freshmen, unproven, inexperienced freshmen. And that's fine. Those guys are going to learn, and they're probably going to get forced into action pretty early on. But if Kobe King or Dom DeLuca, Tamir Robinson with Tony Rojas, if any of those guys miss an extended period of time, you're really hurting at linebacker. Because of the limited depth, they had to move a guy like Dakari Nelson, who was adding to that safety room. They have him down at linebacker, and he's most likely going to play that weak side linebacker where Abdul Carter was. But that's not an immediate replacement. So he'll be the backup to a Tony Rojas and probably some other guys too. I think those 5 are going to be your main guys that rotate in, and that's why, again, they're running the 4-2-5 in this case. But linebackers help against run defense. Thank goodness that KJ Winston and Jalen Reed are as good at defending the run as they are, because this allows Penn State the flexibility to run that 4-2-5 and the 4-3 where it is necessary. So for Penn State, they need to hope for the best when it comes to the overall health of this linebacker group, because they really can't afford to lose any of those players. Let's wrap up with special teams. Okay, so they're a part of this overall preview as well to go along with this. You got Riley Thompson, who's now a captain and was one of the best punters in the Big Ten. Riley Thompson is back and punting for Penn State. So the punt game should help complement the defense, help complement the offense when, drive's not sustainable and everything. But flipping that third side of the football is very important. And Riley Thompson being back along with your long snapper and Tyler Dzansky, that is a big deal. Caden Saunders is expected to be your punt returner, and Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen will be your kick returners. Penn State likes to do that, have a shifty slot wide receiver type be your return man, or a defensive back, as we saw with Daquan Hardy, but typically, so now they're going back to Jahan Dotson in years past, Parker Washington, KJ Hamler, Caden Saunders has now stepped up. He will be your starting punt returner. They like to have running backs in the kick game. I don't blame them. Nicholas Singleton has scored a touchdown in his career. We just haven't seen that explosiveness. Outside of Daquan Hardy, it's been pretty limited in terms of Penn State special teams returning a touchdown or making big plays. Singleton has that home run capability, but it hasn't been consistent out of the return game. And other than Daquan Hardy, it had been relatively quiet. Parker Washington didn't offer a lot of explosive, too much that you would have liked. Jahan Dotson really was. And then they stopped punting to him, right? Because they knew what he was able to do. So we'll see if Penn State does have that explosive ability in the special teams games. I'm eager to see, but the punting game will be just the way it should be. No concerns there. Kicking game, Sander Sahadak, Ryan Barker, and Chase Meyer are all competing for the place kicker spot. Kickoff could be anywhere from Gabe Wosu to Sander Sahadak. I don't think the kickoff specialist is of any concern, but I'm eager to see who they trot out there for that place kicking spot, and this could still be a work in progress. I think it is really that close. I would say that it's either Ryan Barker or Sander Sahadak, and don't be surprised if the redshirt freshman in Barker ends up winning the job. But the veteran Sander Sahadak is going to be the favorite until Barker or a Chase Meyer, the transfer from Tulsa, is able to take the job away from him. So that's going to do it and put it all together. Offense, defense, special teams, and predictions for Penn State's entire 2024 campaign. Let me know your predictions down in the comments section. Leave a like on this episode. Share it with friends and family. I appreciate each and every one of you for checking out this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. We'll have more talking about the schedule. Game 1, Week 1, West Virginia. It is finally here, and all the coverage, previews, analysis, and recaps will be right here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And again, thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Football. College football's back, and Spencer McLaughlin, the host of the show, is talking about all of it, previewing all the games leading up to it, roster changes, recapping the results. You get your college football fix with Locked On College Football, hosted by Spencer McLaughlin. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.